Hello and welcome to another episode of Earth911's Sustainability in Your Ear. I'm Mitch Ratcliffe, your host, and we've got another innovator interview today. We're joined by Mike Phillips, who's the founder and CEO of Sense, which is a home electric system monitoring device that you plug into your fuse box, basically, and it tracks the use of power across various devices in your home, reports it back, and allows you to compare your house's performance to other houses like you in areas with similar weather and energy patterns. Mike, welcome to the show. How are you today?
I'm great. Thanks for having me.
Well, first, I want to thank you because you contributed a nice piece about 2021 home energy trends for Earth911, which we'll be promoting folks in the link to this podcast. But I just wanted to start off. Tell us about the Sense monitor and how the home energy monitor works.
Yeah, happy to do it. And if you characterize it as an energy monitor, that's fairly accurate. But I think it's important to know that we're trying to do something a bit broader, which is we have this overall view that the systems of your home should be intelligent. So your home should help you be a more responsible user of energy. So it's certainly an energy part, but it should also give you awareness of what's going on when you're not around. So you can see, did you leave the oven on when you left the house and so on, or let you know if something's not right. Like today, the way you know your air conditioner is not working right is your house doesn't get cool anymore. And, at that point, it's an emergency, or at least if you live in Texas or something in the middle of the summer, it's an emergency to get it fixed. And, why shouldn't your home have something like the check engine light for your car to let you know that something's not quite right and you might want to do something about it ahead of time? So that's the broader set of things that we're trying to do here.
Well, now you have both a sort of a basic system and one that's designed for homes with a solar feed. And you also introduced a couple of things this week, the Power Quality Project that tracks variations in the electricity that's entering your home, shows the voltage data and so forth, as well as what you call a floating neutral project that allows the home to identify the kinds of emerging issues you just described. A device starting to behave strangely, and so it would call out an alert, you're going to have a problem. Does this require your entire home be smart, or does the Sense system add that intelligence to the house?
Yes. So the way this works is, as I mentioned, we're trying to provide this intelligence, home level intelligence. And, we didn't want to wait for the Internet of Things to be all done where, all devices would just tell us what they're doing. Once they do, we're happy to make use of that. So When we started the company, we set out to find a different way to find what's going on in your home. We realized that a lot of the things that we all care about are connected to your power system. Realize that they use power slightly differently. So the way your toaster uses power is different than the way your refrigerator uses power. So the idea is if we measured the power in a really, really detailed way, can we tell what's going on just from these power signals? So the base of what we've been doing is a technology called load disaggregation, using this very detailed view of power to know that the toaster just turned on or the microwave just turned on, to give you this view from an energy and device activity perspective, what's happening. But as you're mentioning, now that we have this really detailed view of power, we can use it for all sorts of other things, like letting you know that there's a problem with the wiring in your house.
So one of the things that your system does is track the power that's being sold back to the grid if you have solar. Is that dependent on the utility's ability to make that connection, or can a consumer just add this to their house and start to track it without having to also connect it to outside services to make sense of the data?
Yeah, so if people buy one of our Sense monitors, they can get it installed by an electrician, and it should be installed by an electrician, can install inside the electrical panel. And there's these things called CT clamps. They're just little clamps that clamp around the outside of the main wires. And that's what we use to measure the power. And if you have solar, there's an optional set of these sensors, we call them, to measure the solar also. So that means that we can see the power coming from solar. We can see the power your home is using, and then give you a nice application that gives you a unified view of how much you're producing, how much you're using, how much is going back to the grid, and how much you're buying from the utility.
Well, how much of this is dependent on the emergence of a smart home platform to extend the kinds of insights that you're talking about? So, and I know that there's a standard, Zigbee, for internet-connected smart devices. What's the status of that standard, and how many new devices do you expect to see over the course of the next years that add smarts to the home?
So our base offering is not depending on that. That's what I mentioned. We didn't want to wait for that. So we're doing all the sensing part of what we're doing just from the power signals, or primarily from the power signals. But we do very much connect into other smart devices, especially for control and automation. I mean, some people see what we're doing and say, "Oh, well, you don't do automation, you just do sensing." Well, that's wrong. I mean, we're doing the sensing because we needed that to drive the intelligence, and we need the intelligence to do automation in good ways. So we're just starting to do our first automation. We've had control in our app for a little while, and we're starting to do automation. So to control something, we do need to be able to talk to the device through a software interface called an API. And the problem has been that even with Zigbee and Wi-Fi connectivity, there has not been standards for how to do that at the device level. So we've had to do integrations, and we have to do special work for integrating to Amazon Alexa, and then another integration for Google Home, and then another one for Philips Hue lights, and so on and so on. And so that's been a kind of a barrier for us and others, is this lack of interoperability among all these different smart home devices. But as you're alluding to, there's been an underlying standard called Zigbee, but being layered on top of that now is something called CHIP, which is a Connected Home Internet Protocol. Sorry for they're nerding out on this stuff, but I think finally the big players like Google and Amazon or others are now cooperating on this new standard. And there's hope in the future for interoperability that will make everyone's lives easier.
So as I add smart thermostats, smart light bulbs, appliances that can interact with the smart home, Sense will be able to not only integrate that additional information, but help me to control those things through your app?
That's right. I mean, take like a thermostat. That's a really good example, because a thermostat, is taking care of your HVAC system, and it knows what it's asking the HVAC to do, and it knows the set points, it knows the indoor and outdoor temperature, but it doesn't see what the HVAC is actually doing. It doesn't know that your AC turned on and is using 4,000 watts right now. Mm-hmm. We, on the other hand, we see what the AC is doing. We see it's turned on and it's using 4,000 watts right now, but we don't know what it was being asked to do. So you can see that by combining those two things, if we know how it's being controlled, what it's being asked to do, and then what actually happens, that between us and the thermostat providers, we can provide really big future value around efficiency, performance tracking, and this thing called load shifting or demand response for starting to shift the time of when you use energy in your home to better match the conditions of the grid.
So I think that's a critical point, is what we're talking about is the evolution of an environment in which our listeners are going to be able to better manage their home, not only for sustainability, but also to lower the cost of the use of electricity. So let's talk a little about that use time. There are different parts of the day when electricity costs different amounts of money because more people are asking for it. Generally right now, and for somebody who doesn't have that kind of smart insight into their home, when is the best time of the day to, say, run the laundry or run the dishwasher in order to be both put less demand on the grid and to save money?
Yeah, so it really does depend on the region that you're in and depending on the programs your utility might have. But you're right. So, for example, in California, there's a lot of excess solar capacity in the afternoon, and then demand comes a couple hours later in the evening. There's a famous thing called the duck curve that if you plot it, it looks kind of like a duck, I guess. So there's a lot of incentive for utilities and for consumers to start to better use the energy when it's both more cost effective, but also cleaner. I mean, when we start to look at carbon impact or the climate change impact of these, there is actually quite a bit of variability about when there's lots of clean power on the grid, like when solar is producing a lot, versus when the utilities have to rely on dirtier fuel sources. So you're right that combining both the environmental aspects and the cost aspect is a little bit of a complicated equation. So we shouldn't like put that burden on the consumers and the homeowners to figure that out. We really should, over time, shift to this kind of automation that I was talking about, where we know exactly how these systems in the home are working, and let there be applications that help manage that for consumers.
So in the long term, do you imagine Sense's data feedback to the customer, including that kind of information? You're going to save more money at this time of the day, or literally, I'll turn on the laundry when you will be having the least carbon impact?
Yeah, I mean, when you think about it, there's some things in your home where you want to use the energy when you want to use it. So the lights and the TV, you don't want to delay your TV watching based on their energy costs. But there's other things in your home where you really don't care when the energy gets used. So charging your car, as long as it goes far enough tomorrow, you don't care when it gets charged. Heating the hot water, you don't care when the energy is used for that, as long as your water's hot, cooling the home and so on. So I think for that category, I think relying on automation is going to be eventually how these things work. And look, I think most consumers also don't want to give control of that over to their utility, for example. So most people don't want to say, you, the utility, you get to control when my hot water gets heated. But we think that the answer is going to be applications that run on behalf of the consumer. So the consumer can choose to use an application to help them better manage the devices in their home and save money and have the environmental impact.
And an additional question on that front. Are you also envisioning the Sense device helping people understand their carbon footprint from their energy use?
Yeah, so we are doing some work now, and we'll probably be releasing later in the year some of that like accounting, and even able to like shift like your EV charging based on what's called carbon intensity. So it's the carbon mix of the fuel sources. So absolutely, and people want to do what they can to help with climate change, and one of the things is to at least be aware of how the timing of various actions in your home matter.
So let me turn to some of the elements of your article that you contributed about 2021 home energy trends. And I want to focus first on solar. You just mentioned a lot of us are thinking about adding solar, but only about 2% of all American homes have adopted solar at this point. What's your advice for somebody considering solar? Should they have a battery so that they can offset evening energy use with daytime solar generation, or is it sufficient to simply be connected to the grid and use the grid energy at the night? What's the best way to get the most out of your power is really the question.
Well, so first of all, the price of solar has been dropping dramatically, and it really is cost effective now for many people to have solar on their roofs, and it's of course a great source of clean power. And it depends, of course, on what state you're in and what programs your utility has. So I think the best advice is to check your local options depending on where you live, and see what the options are. But the timing is just continuing to get, it's very good for this. And we think with, there's going to be good programs this year with the new administration coming in. We will all see, but we think that's going to be in good shape. As far as storage, there's different reasons that people get storage. One is to shift their load. It tends to not necessarily be the best way to do that. What we were talking about before is if you can start to shift your load a little bit more towards the afternoon when your solar is producing, that's probably a more cost-effective way than charging a battery in the afternoon and discharging in the evening. Okay. But still, in some places, it can be economically beneficial to do that.
So you predict faster growth for clean energy generation this coming year, and obviously there was a lot of growth last year. About 20.4% of U.S. energy in the first 9 months of the year was actually generated by renewable sources. What do you see as the catalysts for that growth, and how much do you expect to see renewable energy grow over the course of the next year?
Well, certainly there's policy aspects, but look, by far the strongest driver, and it's great that we're finally getting here, is cost. Renewable energies and clean energies are now more cost effective than building, gas-fired power plants anymore. So I think now that the economics are flipping, especially if you look at the risk of future, restrictions on carbon emissions, the economics are clearly in favor now. And I think, if you look at the new generation, it's actually much more biased towards renewables. And I think it's because the market has now realized that the economics have flipped.
Well, it is definitely cheaper. So what kinds of, let's take it this way. What advice do you have to the Biden administration about incentives or subsidies that they should put in place in order to encourage greater adoption of renewables in various regions?
So some of the most dramatic and I think transformational aspects of this is something called electrification of everything. So, we're already seeing that in transportation, going from gas-powered cars to electric vehicles, but it's even happening in homes. Going from oil burners or burning furnaces in the Northeast to efficient heat pumps. That's where we're going to see some very big changes. There's some reports put out by an organization called Rewiring America that shows the economic benefits, the environmental benefits, and the jobs benefits of just accelerating this push to electrification. And whether that's transportation or heating for homes, that's where we're going to see big benefits.
Well, so would you suggest to the Biden administration that they need to add subsidies, or will the market take care of it by itself?
So those of us working in this space, of course, always appreciate when there's subsidies there. But I think even think of it less as subsidies and more as, that there's going to need to be economic stimulus as we recover from COVID here. And this is just a great opportunity to spend that stimulus in ways that get multiple benefits, the environmental benefits and the jobs benefits of these the kinds of things that we can do to improve efficiencies of homes, whether that's electrification or weather stripping and insulation or new solar panels on roofs. These are all contribute to jobs, contribute to economic activity, and have the climate change benefits that we need.
It also sounds like, as you mentioned, you need an electrician to put this in, but you're also talking about layers of intelligence that sit on top of your device and the evolving grid. And you also talked about jobs. You see a big growth in smart home work over the course of the next 10 years. And what will that look like? Is it more electricians, or is it more people who understand how to code based on the data being exchanged by these devices?
Yeah, so certainly a lot of the efficiency upgrades that need to happen. For example, we just did a study of 15,000 HVAC systems. And we found that if you took the 20% worst performing homes from an air conditioning perspective and upgraded them to be new modern air conditioners, that would save 8% of all US electricity and 13% of peak demand in California. So you solve multiple problems at once, and you need to replace 20% of the AC systems in the country. And imagine the jobs and economic impact, because this is all local jobs to put in a new air conditioning system. On your first point about things like what we're doing requiring an electrician, that's true. But there's another thing that's happening right now, which is we're working with Schneider Electric, who has Square D in North America, who builds the electrical infrastructure for homes. They are now taking this kind of intelligence and putting into their core products. They have a new thing called the Energy Center, which combines solar plus this kind of intelligence that Sense is providing, plus battery storage, and it's targeted for things like the new construction in California. There's some new rules called Title 24 that requires new homes to have ability to have solar on them. So there's a lot of things coming together that means that these things are just going to be this way to start with, versus figuring out how do you do this after the fact.
Are Sense devices available through various utilities with incentive programs now?
Yep. There's some utilities that we're working with, and as I mentioned, we work with Schneider Electric for how this is being built into electrical panels, and they have products on the market today. We also work with solar installers. Some solar installers are including Sense along with your solar installation at the same time.
Mhm.
And we're also working with, on the utility front, we work with a company called Landis and Gear, who's one of the major makers of utility meters. That there will be future utility meters, or ones that they have today that they're now working on installing with utilities, that can run things like Sense just as software. Like, remember the days when your phone was just a phone, and if you wanted like a navigation system or a music player, you'd have to go buy a separate piece of hardware. That's where we are today in this kind of energy meter world. But there's no reason a future meter can't become like a smartphone, so that you can have apps that could run on this meter that can do things like help you manage your energy use or help you automate when your EV gets charged and so on. So that's the part of the future that we're leading towards, is this stuff just being built in, and quite excited about.
So what does that suggest about the next few years in terms of the big gaps in consumer technology that are going to enable the smart home? What are you expecting in terms of major innovations? New devices, new services, battery technology? What kind of things should listeners be watching out for as key moments that reflect a big leap forward in electrification?
So what I was just talking about is how the infrastructure itself, so your electrical panel, your meters are going to start to have this intelligence built in. And that's going to be proceeding, and it takes a little while as these things get to market at scale. In the meantime, I think the biggest thing on the consumer side is what we started to talk about a little earlier, which is how there'll start to be interoperability standards among all these smart home devices. There's been a first wave of smart home devices like thermostats and light switches and so on that haven't really worked well together. They sometimes plug into a platform like Alexa or Google Home, but we really want them to actually all work together without having to go through one of those platforms. And that's where this new Zigbee work around chip, we are excited about. And so back to your consumer side, as there starts to be these standards-based, chip-based smart devices, which it looks like there will be in 2021, certainly biased towards getting those ones, because they're the ones that are going to be future-proofed as we pull all this together to a unified smart home instead of these little islands that we have today.
So where can our listeners find Sense? Can they go to Lowe's or Home Depot to buy it, or do they need to go online?
So at Lowe's and Home Depot, the Schneider version is called the Wiser Energy Monitor. We work closely with them on that, and the Sense application runs there. That's from Lowe's and Home Depot. And then the Sense version of that we built ourselves is available on our website and available on Amazon.
Great. Well, that's at sense.com, folks. Check it out. And we recently wrote a review. We'll link to it in the article about this podcast. But Sense is a really fascinating device that points to a future where our homes are telling us a lot more about how they behave and perform, not simply running in the background and potentially wasting a lot of energy. Mike, I want to thank you for taking some time to talk with us today.
Thank you so much.
Folks, that was Mike Phillips. He's the CEO of Sense and also author of our 2021 Home Energy Trends article, which will be appearing at the same time. This is Earth911, Sustainability in Your Ear, and I'm Mitch Ratcliffe. We'll be back with another innovative interview soon. But in the meantime, folks, take care of yourself, take care of one another, and let's take care of the planet.